Bullying is continuing to be a growing crisis in South African schools, and it is not just a schoolyard issue, but societal one at large, as it leaves deep scars and demands collective action. A disturbing incident at Milnerton High School in Cape Town has shocked the nation and reignited urgent conversations about learner safety, mental health and accountability. This comes after a video footage of a grade 10 learner being brutally assaulted by fellow students in a locker room went viral on social media. The widely circulated video shows the boy being beaten with belts and hockey sticks while others watched and cheered. 6 of the 8 learners captured assaulting the boy were arrested and charged with assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. They have since been released on 2,000 rand bail each, while the 2 minors were released into the custody of their guardians. They have all been suspended and will write their final examination at a separate location. However, for the victim and his family, the trauma is far from over. Let's unpack this now with the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education, Terence Kala, and the CEO of the School Safety Advocacy Foundation, Ria Piega, who joins us virtually. Terence, we're going to start the conversation with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Perhaps give us, on very specifically the Milnerton High School case, perhaps give us a sense of what the intervention was that was undertaken by the Department of Basic Education.
Oliver, what a pleasure to join you this afternoon, and good afternoon to the fellow panelists. Look, I mean, what's important for us to highlight is that fact that swift action was taken by the province. I think it's very commendable to indicate that they were very swift in terms of investigating the matter and making sure that they provided their requisite psychosocial support to the learner, and making sure that in this instance that the right forms of reactions were taken in terms of making sure that the incident was swiftly dealt with. So I think we do commend that, and I think what's important to note is that this does also then cover the psychosocial element of making sure that the learner's well-being was also then well looked after.
Yeah, Ria, I want to bring you into the conversation. What does the SSAF's data show and research show around bullying trends in South African school? Is it on the decline? Is it on the incline? And if so, what are the specific contributing factors to the movement of that data?
Oliver, thank you to you and to the listeners and to my fellow panelists. I think I'm going to go straight to what SABC is doing. If you study the statistics that is being produced by SABC, they have included a category called crimes in educational institutions. We used not the SABC used not to have that section in terms of their statistics. And quarterly, if you look at what they are reporting, we are seeing a very concerning trend, because just in the last quarter, you would have noticed that they reported something like 8 murders in educational institutions, something like plus 60 rapes, something like 250 plus assault, GBH, 22 attempted murders, and all those things tell you a story, because that's just a quarter. If you were to extrapolate and put it into a year, it shows a very concerning trend. And I also must say here that those are reported cases. There may be many other cases that are not reported. So when you see the Milnerton incident, you must not look at it, as an isolated incident. We must be worried about what is happening in our schools. And also, let us also take into cognizance the fact that the school is a microcosm of society. So whatever is happening in society transfers itself into the school.
Yeah. Terence, perhaps to bring you back in here, earlier this year, in fact, about 3 months ago, the Minister of Basic Education and the Minister of Police had signed a memorandum and an agreement, a mutual support agreement, where SABC would be working much closer with schools to ensure learner and teacher safety within the schooling environment. Despite that, of course, we're still seeing bullying incidents happening. Tell us how that particular agreement and program is meant to curb incidents of bullying in schools.
Indeed, Oliver, I think it's important to highlight that, because that's the broader framework within which our interventions are based. I mean, that's one, but many interventions that the department has. I mean, it's obviously also within the context of our national school safety framework, as well as our school safety protocol that we have with SABC. And I think that is ensured to make sure that every school has a functional safety committee, number one, but also that the school has direct links with the police station that is within the preview of that school. And what that is aimed to do is to make sure that the school has direct links firstly, but then it has a swift mode of interaction within the police services that is able to then root out elements such as this. But also with regards to the element of bullying, which I think is more important, the department does have its anti-bullying campaign as well as our psychosocial support mechanisms that we provide. And I think within this, it's within that preview of obviously strengthening the systems that exist within schools and provinces. But obviously you did allude to it in your prelude, where you indicated that education is a societal issue. And I think it's important that every arm of society continues to take up the lead. Hence, when the department goes out on its school safety and anti-bullying campaign, we bring all members of society on board. The religious sector is part of us, the SABC are part of us, but also community leaders within each of these communities that we go to make sure that when the department brings these interventions, they're actually anchored in community-led interventions, but ones that are also speaking specifically to the specific challenges that exist within those communities and those that permeate into the school community as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about bullying and the accountability mechanisms around bullying. Ria, perhaps to ask a question to you more specifically, someone that has both experience in the South African police and now overseeing the school safety element of your work. Who should be held responsible for instances of bullying, rampant bullying in schools in particular?
Look, we're dealing here with a systemic issue which requires systemic interventions. And listening to my fellow panelists from the Department of Education, I can't echo it more to say it requires all of us to be involved. It starts from the family through to the community, to the school, to the neighbor, to the civil society, to those that are investing in social investment initiatives in schools. It is important for all of us. All hands must be on deck. The solution is not lying with one particular sector or aspect of the society. I think we would achieve more by just making sure that all of us, our hands are on deck. We bring our little bit into this process. And I want to say, I mean, it's like when they say, how do you maul an elephant? One bite at a time. And if you bring more bites around that, then we can deal with the elephant in the room. From a civil society point of view, the work that we do, for instance, a Safer South Africa Foundation, we're not working alone. We're working with SABC, we're working with NPA, Correctional Service, Human Rights Commission, the banks. So the program that we offer brings more people on board because we need to start saying, yes, there is place for punishment. Those the interventions that are being made to punish are one thing, but are we solving the whole problem? No, there must still be more interventions. Then is way ahead of them. So we must find ways of saying, after the punishment, how are they helped to become productive, future contributing citizens of the country?
Yeah. Terence, how is it that we can build safer environments in our schools beyond just disciplinary action in schools? In particular, when we talk about bullying, I must also preface to say that bullying is not just an act of physical assault, right? Bullying can be psychological as well, and we often see that going unreported in our schooling environments. But how do we ensure that we build safer schooling environments and equip all those in the ecosystem to be able to participate in ensuring that schools are free of violence?
Well, it all stems from us continuing the conversation and continuing to have the tough conversations and really looking at how we deal with our community issues that tend to find their way into schools. Because what we do see, as Mamrea did reiterate, that schools are a microcosm of the communities where they are located. And what we tend to find is the red zones and schools that suffer quite significantly from violent acts and continue to face acts of violence are also in violent communities. So it begins from that. It begins with us saying, how do we take a whole of society approach that looks at our communities and looks at some of the issues that are systemic within our communities that are affecting our young people and causing the various violent acts. So in our schools, we do have psychosocial support mechanisms that we offer to learners, these need to be taken up to make sure that where learners are facing challenges of a psychosocial nature, that they don't find themselves emanating in and reacting in violence, that these can also be dealt with in a manner that allows the learner to offload and be able to then take into their confidence the fact that the systems are there and the systems are ready to be able to look after them and make sure that the schooling environment is not only safe for them, but every learner that comes into our schools.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a line that can be drawn that shows a correlation between bullies in schools, particularly the most egregious kind of bullies, as well as their likelihood of ending up in gangsterism or a crime-ridden life later on in life. And so there's a question about how do we nip that in the bud as early as possible. There used to be a very strong and robust juvenile school system that became a conduit for communities and schools to get rid of the most egregious and the most stubborn bullies in schools and get them out of that environment and place them in an environment where they could be rehabilitated continuously from a young age. Is that approach an effective approach, and do we make use of it in South Africa enough?
As I said, you are right that in the past there were a lot of those schools where you would take the children away from their homes, from their schools, to go into that corrective institution. I'm just not sure how active those are, but I still want to emphasize the fact that it will be a part solution, because there are a lot of children who are still in their homes that require the types of interventions that we're talking about with my fellow panelists. So, indeed, corrective. I would want to say where we are sitting as Safer South Africa Foundation, we're saying bring in interventions that actually deals with prevention more than reactive interventions. So all those two must come together. The reactive interventions that we're seeing in Milnerton, the work that we're doing as society with the schools and others to say there can be prevention coming in. Just today, I'm talking to you from Potchefstroom because I was in Klerksdorp, where a church, a whole diocese, has organized this program for the young children in that church. And it was about 5 churches that participated in this program over a period of about 3 weeks. So it was a graduation of those. So we are able to take programs, preventative programs such as this, not only to the children in schools, but the children out of schools. If the organizations that are out of school realize the importance of this, we work very well with the Department of Education and other partners in schools. We also focus on youth out of schools. Companies do come on board to say, you know what, come in the communities. Can we also take this type of educational and awareness program to youth in youth out of school? So I just think everything will help. We must do a lot and find conversations, as my panelist is saying. Let's converse, let's find ways. And like what you're doing today, you are making us to converse as a nation.
Yeah. Terence, let's talk about the removal of the most recalcitrant bullies in our schools. Oftentimes, schools do have the mechanisms to suspend and later on expel these learners. But should they be under the age of 16, they're still fully, almost entirely entitled to a schooling opportunity. In fact, up until 18, but of course their parents carry some level of that responsibility to keep them in school until 16. They get absorbed into the schooling system just in a different school, but the behavioral element is not corrected. Is there any sort of program by the department, whether in the provinces or nationally, to track habitual bullies who get expelled from schools and get reabsorbed elsewhere and continuously exhibit the same problematic behavior?
Well, ideally for us, the idea is not to lose these learners at all. The idea for us is to make sure that we also then create safer environments within our schools. Obviously, we don't want elements of learners that are polarizing the school system, but the idea also is not to lose a young soul and a young citizen to the world and then become those learners that are not in employment, education, or any form of training. So for us, the idea, Oliver, is to create the mechanisms, first and foremost, for these candidates and these learners to be able to be continued within the basic education system. But obviously, where the need does arise, we do then have to then work with our sister departments, such as social development, to ensure that then we create alternative education streams for these learners to be able to then not be lost to the broader world. So it is important that it is, as mentioned, a whole-of-government approach so that we make sure that the mechanisms and systems that we have within the broader government structure then obviously speak to the various needs that our young people have.
Yeah, and so what then is the rehabilitation system of what are habitual bullies in schools, but also more importantly, those whose act of bullying are tantamount to criminal activity?
Well, where there's criminal activity, obviously, Oliver, we need to allow the criminal justice system to take place. But obviously, as mentioned, through certain mechanisms and systems such as the school's code of conduct, there are mechanisms where the school can then obviously indicate that unfortunately this child is no longer able to fit within the rules and conduct of the school, and we would then have to release the learner, as mentioned, where we then deal with our sister departments to make sure that the learners then don't get lost to the broader system. But as mentioned, once again, it's about us then continuing to strengthen the various systems and the mechanisms that we have within schools so that firstly we identify the behavior that can lead to these elements of bullying, make sure that where our psychosocial support mechanisms are able to kick in, they do so, and they create really a buffer between the learner and this type of behavior that can be able to polarize them and put at risk their education.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, Terence. Really do appreciate it, as well as Ria Piecha, who is with the Safer Schools Foundation, and Terence being with the Department of Basic Education.